It's a bloodbath in Montecito for Archewell and Prince Harry and Meghan Markle as they have lost another staff member.
She doesn't listen to anybody. She appoints people to be their head of PR and deal with the issues.
This one, their longest serving and head of Archewell, James Holt, who was even with them when they were still...
There's a moment when you realize your dream job has become a nightmare. For Meredith Maines, that moment came when she watched Meghan Markle insert her Duchess title into a carefully crafted Harper's Bazaar article, turning professional PR into personal branding theater. For James Holt, it was quieter, more devastating. The realization that loyalty meant nothing when you were standing between Meghan and whatever she wanted next. They're not the first to walk away from Camp Sussex. They won't be the last, and what they're saying behind closed doors is making Hollywood's most powerful publicists think twice before answering that Montecito phone call.
It's been announced over the weekend that they've lost their 11th publicist since they went to America. That's in 5 years. 11.
Let's talk about the exits nobody's supposed to discuss. 11 senior PR professionals have left Harry and Meghan's operations since they fled the royal family in 2020. 11! That's not a staffing issue. That's not bad timing. That's a pattern so obvious it should come with a warning label. Meredith Maines lasted 7 months as their U.S. communications chief. 7 months before she decided her reputation was worth more than the paycheck. And here's the thing that makes this different from typical celebrity staff drama. These aren't interns who couldn't handle the pressure. These are seasoned professionals who've worked with A-list talent, managed crisis after crisis, built brands from scratch.
This is a catastrophe. It is never, ever, ever a good look in business when you are losing basically your entire staff.
They've handled egos before. They've navigated chaos. But something about the Sussex operation made them throw up their hands and walk. James Holt's departure hit different, though. He wasn't just another executive on the payroll. He was Harry's last living connection to his old world, the guy who understood both sides of the Atlantic, who could translate between royal protocol and California casual.
She and Harry are convinced by their rightness. They think they know best.
When Holt walked out that door, he didn't just quit a job. He closed the escape hatch Harry thought he still had. But the real story isn't just that people keep leaving, it's why. Picture this. You're a top-tier communications professional. Your phone rings. It's an opportunity to work with the Duke and Duchess of Sussex. Global platform, massive reach, a chance to shape the narrative around two of the most talked about people on the planet. The mission statement is beautiful. Compassion and action, leading with empathy. You think this could be legacy-defining work, so you say yes. You sign the papers. You walk through that door ready to make magic happen. And then you meet the reality behind the branding.
To James Holt, who's been the executive director of Archewell since its inception. He's been with Harry and Meghan. He was featured on their...
Former staff describe a cycle that plays out with almost algorithmic precision. First, you're hired because you're brilliant. They want your expertise, your connections, your strategic mind. You develop strategies, you create rollout plans, you map out crisis management protocols based on decades of experience. You present your ideas with confidence because this is what you do. This is why they hired you. But then something shifts. Your carefully researched strategy gets overruled within hours, not because there's a better plan, but because it doesn't align with Meghan's gut feeling that morning, or Harry's mood has changed, and now everything needs to pivot.
Perhaps they need to be looking at themselves, because good firms, good people, have people, long-standing people around.
One former aide described it as being a professional GPS that gets completely ignored while the driver insists on following vibes instead of actual directions. You watch in real time as decisions get made based on emotion rather than strategy, as carefully planned rollouts get ditched after one bad headline, as crisis management protocols get abandoned after a single negative tweet. And when the improvised chaos inevitably flops, guess whose fault it becomes? Not the people who ignored your advice. You, the expert they hired, then refused to listen to, now gets blamed for outcomes you explicitly warned them about. You're left defending decisions you never made, while Harry and Meghan rewrite history in real time.
Because when it comes to business, it's glaringly bad when basically the entire staff of a company leaves.
The gaslighting is Olympic level. But it gets worse when you look at the day-to-day reality. Multiple insiders paint a picture of Meghan as someone who micromanages down to individual words, then changes her mind constantly. Emails come back at 2 in the morning because one adjective didn't feel right. You fix it, you send it back. The next day it gets changed again, then changed back to the original. Nothing is ever final. Nothing is ever settled. You could work on something for 3 weeks and watch it get completely undone in a midnight message because Meghan had a feeling.
The Hollywood Reporter and Vanity Fair magazine, both of which in extensive investigations alleged that she was a bullying boss who reduced grown men to tears.
Staff reportedly lived in constant anxiety, checking their phones at all hours, waiting for the next message that could demolish weeks of progress. It wasn't leadership, it was creative whiplash dressed up as collaboration. One former employee said the worst part wasn't even the chaos. It was knowing that praise only flowed when things went right, but blame was guaranteed when anything went sideways. You're celebrated right up until the moment something doesn't work, then suddenly it's your strategy that failed. The people whose names are on the building somehow never share responsibility for disasters, only credit for wins. But here's where Meredith Main's story gets particularly revealing. She actually managed to do something impressive in early 2025. She slightly improved Harry's public image. The problem was Meghan, because with Meghan, nothing is ever enough. According to Neil Sean and multiple industry insiders, the breaking point came with Harper's Bazaar. Meghan landed a profile in the magazine. Good placement, respected publication, the kind of editorial coverage most celebrities would celebrate. But Meghan didn't want Harper's Bazaar. She wanted Vogue. She wanted Anna Wintour calling her personally. She wanted Paris Fashion Week to feel like a coronation. When the Harper's Bazaar piece was being finalized, Meghan reportedly made a demand that sent Main's into crisis mode. She wanted to be identified as Duchess Meghan throughout the article. Not Meghan Markle, not Meghan the entrepreneur, Duchess Meghan. The same title she'd spent years claiming meant nothing to her suddenly became her most important credential. Main's allegedly pushed back. She explained that in American media, the constant Duchess dropping would look desperate. It would undermine the very authenticity they'd been trying to build. But Meghan didn't care about strategy, she cared about status. The article ran with the Duchess title prominently featured, turning what should have been a smart profile into what critics called a vanity project. The backlash was immediate. People noticed, the press noticed. And according to sources close to the situation, Meghan blamed Main's for how the piece was received. Not herself for insisting on the title, Main's, the person who tried to stop the very thing that made the article problematic. That's when the icing out began. Suddenly, Main's wasn't included in key meetings. Her emails went unanswered for days. The message was clear without being spoken. Your time here is ending. But what really sealed Main's exit was the aftermath of Paris Fashion Week. Meghan attended, desperate for that Anna Wintour moment, that Vogue cover energy, that fashion world validation she'd been chasing since her Suits days. She got photos, she got some coverage, but she didn't get what she really wanted: recognition as a fashion icon. Anna Wintour was polite, but not gushing. The fashion press covered her attendance, but didn't crown her. And in Meghan's world, anything less than worship reads as disrespect. Sources say she spiraled, convinced that Main's hadn't done enough to secure better positioning, better access, better everything. Never mind that Main's was working with a client whose reputation in elite circles had taken serious damage. In Meghan's narrative, the problem was never her. It was always someone else's failure to execute her vision properly. Main's reportedly lasted a few more weeks before quietly negotiating her exit. No dramatic announcement, no public statements. Just another name added to the list of people who realized that no amount of money is worth sacrificing your professional reputation and mental health. And according to industry gossip, Main's didn't leave quietly in the sense that matters. She talked to people. She shared experiences. She made sure her network understood exactly why she walked away. In PR circles, that's how reputations get built and destroyed, not through press releases, but through whispered warnings over drinks. But if Maine's departure was about professional frustration and impossible standards, James Holt's exit was about something deeper. Holt had been with Harry since the royal days. He understood the family dynamics, the media strategies, the protocols. When Harry and Meghan left the UK, Holt was one of the few people who made the journey with them. That meant something. For Harry, Holt represented continuity, a living link to his past, to his father, to the institution he'd left but never fully processed. As long as Holt was around, Harry could tell himself he hadn't completely burned every bridge. He could imagine a scenario where reconciliation was possible. But according to Neil Sean and Palace insiders, Holt's relationship with Meghan deteriorated badly over time. Multiple sources describe increasing tension, with Meghan allegedly treating Holt with hostility that grew worse as months passed. Part of it was apparently about control. Holt knew things Meghan didn't. He had relationships she couldn't access. He had Harry's ear in ways that predated her existence in Harry's life. For someone who allegedly needs to control every narrative and every relationship around her, that was intolerable. Holt reportedly tried to give Harry honest advice, the kind that came from genuine care, advice that sometimes contradicted what Meghan wanted. And in the Sussex household, contradicting Meghan is basically a fireable offense. What made Holt's situation particularly painful was Harry's refusal to intervene. He watched someone who'd been loyal to him for years get treated badly, and he did nothing. He chose Meghan's comfort over Holt's dignity. And when Holt finally decided enough was enough and walked away, Harry was reportedly devastated. Not devastated enough to actually address the behavior that drove Holt out, just devastated that the consequences had arrived. But here's what Harry apparently didn't fully grasp until Holt was gone. With Holt's departure, his last real connection to palace life, to potential reconciliation, to any kind of easy return path, basically evaporated. Without him, Harry is surrounded entirely by Meghan's world, Meghan's perspective, Meghan's version of reality. There's no one left who remembers him as Prince Harry before he became Meghan's husband. And according to rumors that have circulated since his departure, Holt didn't exactly leave with his lips sealed. He talked. He shared his experience. That kind of inside testimony from someone with Holt's credibility does damage that no PR campaign can fully repair. But beyond these two high-profile exits, there's a broader pattern that keeps repeating itself. It's the pattern of Harry and Meghan taking credit for work other people actually did, of swooping in for photo opportunities while staff handled all the heavy lifting. Remember Archetypes? The podcast that was supposed to revolutionize conversations about women? Behind the scenes, talented women reportedly did the research, conducted pre-interviews, shaped the narrative arc. Out front, Meghan collected praise while the people who actually made the show happen remained invisible. This same dynamic plays out repeatedly. Charity events where actual organizers spend months planning, only to have Harry and Meghan arrive for 15 minutes, pose for photos, and dominate the headlines. But perhaps nothing captures the Sussex paradox quite like Meghan's relationship with her Duchess title. She fled the institution that gave it to her. She blamed that institution for her suffering in the most public way possible, and then she landed in America and wrapped that Duchess title around herself like a security blanket. Utterly useless in the United States, frequently mocked, yet desperately clung to. Sources say staff were required to address her formally as Duchess Meghan or Madam, while public messaging tried to paint her as just Meghan, your relatable California girl boss. You can't have it both ways. You can't trash the monarchy, then demand people bow to your royal title. But what ties all these stories together is something former employees describe as the blame deflection feedback loop. Harry and Meghan have apparently created an environment where nothing is ever their fault. Bad press? The media's racist. Failed projects? The team didn't execute properly. Public backlash? People are jealous. There's always an external explanation that absolves them of responsibility. And Harry fully co-signs this reality distortion. Together, they formed what insiders describe as a closed loop of delusion and entitlement that leaves zero room for growth or self-reflection. One former aide described it perfectly. Working for them is like being cast in a play where the script keeps changing, but you're the only one who didn't get the new pages, and you're still somehow responsible when the show bombs. The breaking point for most staff comes when they realize that no amount of talent, effort, or loyalty will ever be enough. Eventually, self-preservation kicks in. Eventually, you realize your reputation in the industry matters more than whatever equity you thought you were building with two people who will blame you the second things go sideways. And that's exactly what happened to Meredith Maines and James Holt. Maines realized she was being set up to take the fall for Meghan's impossible demands. Holt realized his years of loyalty meant nothing compared to Meghan's need for total control. They both made the calculation that smart people make when they find themselves in toxic situations. They left. They protected themselves. They moved on. So here we are, another departure. Another red flag. The pattern is undeniable now. When 11 senior professionals quit, when people with decades of experience walk away from high-paying jobs, it's not them. It's leadership that mistakes control for competence, instinct for insight, titles for talent. It's bosses who preach compassion publicly while creating chaos privately. Camp Sussex will keep finding new hires. Good salaries attract brave souls, but the reputation is set now. In PR circles, among media professionals, within Hollywood's inner networks, there's a warning that gets passed around. And sometimes the bravest thing you can do is walk away before you become part of the wreckage. The staff broke their silence. The question is whether anyone in Montecito is actually listening.